Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to set up your RCBS 9mm dies. Alright, so today we're going to be working with the RCBS 3-die carbide 9mm die set. In the set, there will be 3 different dies. You'll have your depriming and resizing die, your expander die, and your bullet seating die. Now in this kit, there will be 2 different types of bullet seater plugs. One will be for flat nose ammunition, and one will be for round nose ammunition. And that's really important when you get to the seating part of it, otherwise you could damage your projectile. One thing to note is the expander decap assembly should protrude through the bottom of the die 4/10 of an inch. You can adjust it by loosening the nut and screwing the rod down or up to make that measurement accurate. Now with a carbide sizer die, we're going to start off by placing the shell holder into the ram. Place the die into the press. We're going to run the ram all the way to the top and screw the resizing die all the way down until you hit the shell holder. At that point, you'll lock your locking nut into place. And now you're ready to resize and deprime your brass. Now for the expanding die, RCBS pre-2010 has a tapered expander, and after 2010 has a stepped expander. Now my die set is after 2010, so I have a stepped expander plug. So we'll go ahead and we'll just insert this into the expander die. Now, the expander plug, the purpose for it is to expand the case so you can seat the bullet into the case just a little bit, so when you're actually seating the bullet, it fits. If you don't do this process, you'll just crush your cases. So this is a necessary step in order to get the bullet to seat into the casing. So now I'm going to run the ram all the way up. I'm going to screw the expander die down so it touches the shell holder, and it needs to be just above, so I'm going to just turn it back just slightly, and then I'm going to set my locking ring of the die. Going to raise the ram. I'll take an empty shell, put it into the shell holder. Before I run the ram all the way up, I'm going to back out the expander plug, run the ram all the way to the top, and now I'm going to run the expander plug down until I meet resistance. Now this is kind of tricky because it takes a little bit of work. You don't want to flare the bell too much, otherwise you're going to have problems when you seat the bullet into the casing. You'll run into a lot of different issues. So what you're going to do is raise or lower the case down, screw the expander plug down just a little bit, and you're just going to go slowly, and it may take a few times. This is where you got to have patience, because all you're trying to do here is make sure that the bullet seats or leads into the case, and that's not enough. So I'm going to put it back into the shell holder. I'm going to lower the expander plug, and I'm just going to keep doing this until I find the sweet spot where the bullet actually seats nicely into the case mouth. The first time I did this was really frustrating for me because I couldn't figure out how much, and I ran into a lot of issues with it. So again, patience is key. You want to make sure that you have just enough bell, but not too much. And there we go. Now I have just enough bell in the case to allow the bullet to seat. How do I know? The bullet doesn't fall out. In a case that hasn't been belled, it'll just fall out. If you have too much, back to seating plug out. Sorry, expanding plug out. And if you don't have enough, keep going down. And the final step is to make sure that you have your expanding plug locked into place. You don't want this moving around. Now you're ready to expand your cases. All right, for bullet seating and crimping, that's our next die. We'll go ahead and place that into the press. Just get it started. And this is for illustration purposes only, so it doesn't have a primer or any powder, obviously. But it's supposed, in order to set the die, you're supposed to place a primed and fully charged case into your shell holder. Run it all the way up to the top. You're going to screw the die down until you touch the mouth of the case. Next, you will back out the die one full turn and temporarily lock your die lock in place. You'll lower the ram. You'll back out your bullet seater plug several turns. Now, since we're using bullets without a cantilever, we're not going to do a heavy crimp on these, if any. The only time you would crimp is with that cantilever. We'll place the shell into the shell holder, run it up. We'll run the seater plug down, and then we will just make adjustments until we get the appropriate depth that we're looking for. Now, to check the seating depth, I'm looking for 1.1, and there you go. Perfectly seated. For this type of bullet, it's 115 grain full metal jacket. The case overall length should be 1.1. And there we go. Final step, make sure to lock in your seating plug so that doesn't move. As far as crimping, once you have your cartridge overall length measured appropriately, you're going to take your cartridge, place it back into the press, and run it all the way up to the top of the stroke. You're going to back out your seater plug a couple of full turns, loosen up your die, and now you're going to run your die down until you feel resistance against the case. Once you feel that, run the cartridge down. You're going to screw the die itself down about 1/8 of a turn. You're going to lock your locking ring. Run the case up. You should feel a little bit of resistance. And this is where you're going to eyeball it. Now, this projectile doesn't have a cantilever, so I'm not going to put a lot of crimp onto this. If you have a cantilever, of course, you'll want to follow your instructions and make sure that you're getting the appropriate crimp. you're simply just placing enough crimp to hold this bullet into place so it doesn't fall out or move when you're transporting your ammunition around. And to adjust your crimp, if you want more crimp, you'll simply loosen the die and keep turning it down 1/8 of a turn, running the cartridge into the die until you find a crimp that's most appropriate. Once you find the appropriate crimp, you'll want to lock your die in that position, put your cartridge back into the press, run it all the way up to the top, and then run your cedar plug down until you feel resistance. Once you feel that resistance, lock your cedar plug back into place. And now each time you seat a new bullet into the case, it will seat the bullet to the appropriate length and also crimp. One thing I'd like to mention before I end this video is Hornady makes a really nice locking ring. Once you set your dies to where you want them, you can tighten them down with an Allen wrench. They're much better than the standard locking rings that they have, and they're well worth the investment. So once you find the exact spot where you want to place your die, you can tighten those down, set it, forget it, and you're good to go. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Till next time.